I am here with Juanita Boyd, and today's date is May 19th, 2023. Juanita, do you agree for this recording to be shared with the public for historical purposes?
Yes.
Where were you living back in 1941?
I was living on Pontiac Street. It's called Pontiac Boulevard in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Boulevard means there was a parkway in between the Boulevard Street and Pontiac. So that's where I was living.
Okay, that's
It was on the east side of Fort Wayne.
okay. Uh, I guess how old were you?
I was about 10 years old when when Pearl Harbor was bombed.
Okay. I guess.
And it was really scary. We were very afraid and wondering what the world would be like in the next few years.
I would imagine that was pretty scary.
It was. For us little kids, it was very scary. And what made it scarier is we had a German prisoner camp close by. And we would see German prisoners go by in open trucks, go by the house and out to the prisoner camp. And we were always afraid one would escape or something. But there were about 600 prisoners out there, German prisoners. And so that made it doubly scary to know they were so close. But they were well taken care of. We drove by several times, and they were playing soccer. That ended the war, but it wasn't a nice thing to look back on that we had to do.
Okay. First question. How did you find out about the bombing of Pearl Harbor?
We heard it on the radio, and we heard it not too long after it happened. I think it was at noon. We heard it in the afternoon, and we were glued to our radio from then on to see what was going to happen, because it was a pretty scary time. The radio is the only means of communication that we had. We did see pictures of the war when we went to the movies, and we saw newsreels. So that's how we saw any pictures of the war going on, and we actually saw the war at that time. But it was only when you went to the movies. There was no TV or anything like that in the home, so we were glued to our radios. And I'm 91 now, so I was about 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 while the war was going on.
Okay. I guess, where were you at when you found out about the bombing?
I think I was at home. It was hard to remember what day it was or where I was, but I think it was around home.
I guess, what did you do after you found out about the attacks?
Well, we were pretty upset about being attacked and pretty upset about what was going on, so the only way we knew was to listen to the radio to see what was going to happen next.
Yep.
That was a terrible thing to be in war. And we had air raids at least once a week, sometimes once every 2 weeks. We would have air raid sirens that would go off, and a block warden would go around each block to see if he could see any lights. We were supposed to turn our lights all off and stay quiet. And one night we had a knock on the door, and it was the warden saying he could see our radio light. So we had to cover it up with a towel. So, but we were glued to the radios because we didn't know at that time whether it was a real air raid or whether it was a practice. So we had to listen to the radios a lot during that time.
I guess, what are some things that you can, know that have changed since Pearl Harbor?
Well, I think definitely what changed was the women going to work, because very few worked before that time, and because the men had to go to war, the women had to go to work in the factories to to make the parts for the war machines. So a lot of the women went to work, and they're still working. That changed a lot in that area. What changed too is during the war we had a shortage of butter and eggs and some of our groceries. And we had to have coupons, and we used to put yellow in margarine to make it look like butter. Things like that. And so since the war, that has changed because we're not short on those things.
I guess, do you know if there's anything that has stayed the same?
The patriotism towards our country, I think, has stayed the same. Families, importance of families, pretty much stayed the same for a long time.
I guess that's all I had to ask you. Thank you for your time, for letting me interview about this topic, and
Okay, you're welcome.
that's all.
It was fun.
All right, thank you.